Okay, Hare Krishna. I wanted to start by just appreciating the devotees here, running the temple here. All departments. We're, of course, in the temple room, so one department that is particularly special in the temple room is the deity department. The curtains have now closed. They will open shortly. And behind the curtain is the deities of Shri Shri Gaunitai. And Shri Shri Gaunitai are... Gaura is referring to Lord Chaitanya, who's incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. And by the way, because we have a lady here who's here for the first time, I should just mention the word Krishna, just to explain, I think is a very important point to make. The word Krishna means the most beautiful, all-attractive person. So regardless, we look in the room here, I'm in Denmark, so I'm guessing there are people from a Lutheran background in the room. I myself personally come from a Catholic background. We definitely have some people coming from a Hindu background. And I'm sure we have other people coming from other backgrounds in the room in terms of a religious tradition. So the word Krishna means the most beautiful, all-attractive person. And as I tried to explain to my father, without great success, many, many years ago, when I got involved with the Hare Krishna movement, and he said to me that, hey, you know, why are you abandoning the Catholics? Why are you abandoning Jesus Christ, etc.? And I said to him, no, actually, that's not the case. I'm worshipping Jesus' Father, as Jesus said himself, that, I'm the Son of God. He didn't say he was God. He said he was the Son of God. So I'm worshipping Jesus' dad. That's what I'm doing. And he didn't accept that in the sense that, no, it's some alien, foreign, whatever, idol god or whatever it might be. I says, no. I said, do you know what the word Krishna means? Which obviously I knew he did not know what the word Krishna meant, which is always good for a son, to have something that the father doesn't know, because the fathers always like to know they know everything. So I said, well, do you know what the word Krishna means? And of course he said no. And I said, well, Krishna means the most beautiful, all-attractive person. So is Jesus' dad not beautiful? Not all-attractive? So the reason I just raise it here is that the name is describing the qualities of the Supreme Person. There is only one Supreme Person. You cannot have multiple Supreme Persons. You cannot have a Catholic God, a Protestant God, a Hindu God, etc. There is a supreme person. You can only have one. And that name is describing the qualities of that person. It is not a sectarian name. Because one of the challenges that we have in the world that we live in, and the challenge that our community has when we try to introduce people to Krishna consciousness or to knowledge of Krishna, one of the challenges you have is a lot of people are really turned off by what they identify as religion, because they see that it's a cause of conflict and strife and sectarianism in the world. So it's just very important for us to explain that name is not a sectarian name. It's literally just describing the Supreme Person as they are, regardless of whatever tradition you come from. And Srila Prabhupada used to quote a British poet actually called Cowper. And Cowper said that man built the city and God built the country. And in the context, and that's why in the country, it's kind of mode of goodness. It's a peaceful place in the country. It's nature. It's nice, Actually, this watch, I'm getting too much into the watch, but, it monitors different things. And one of the things that it monitors is stress levels. And literally, if you're walking down a city street in a busy city, the orange spikes of stress are spiking. If you're walking in the fields in the countryside, those come right down. Sometimes they disappear altogether and it's just blue, So the country that God built is mode of goodness. The city that man built is mode of passion. And Prabhupada used to then use that analogy to make the point that man built religion. Man built religion. God built spirituality. And it's such an important point, because when religious traditions will say, and they essentially all say it, with the kind of exception of Hinduism, but they essentially all say, our way is the only way. How many times have you met a Christian on the street who will tell you, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light, and no one can go to God except through him? Why would Jesus have a problem with people going to God through another means as long as they're going to God? It makes no sense. And anyway, most religious traditions will push that line, if you like. So, on the altar, when the curtains open, you'll see Gaunitai. Gaura is a direct incarnation of Krishna. And Lord Nityananda, his brother, is a direct incarnation of Krishna's brother, Balaram. And they're the most recent incarnations of God to descend on into the material world, with the exception, of course, of what we were just doing a few minutes ago, chanting the holy name. The holy name also is a representation of God, if you like, an incarnation of God. But in an actual form, Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda were the most recent ones. They came about 540 years ago. They were here. Excuse me. And Lord Nityananda, he spoke one verse, and it goes, Eka Adbhut Mandira, E Haibe Prakash, Gauranga Nityaseva, Haibe Vikash. And that translation of that into English is, one day, soon, so he's speaking this, like I said, about 540 years ago, one day soon, there will be an astounding temple that will rise in Navadvip. And that temple will facilitate the whole world to engage in the eternal service of Gaura and Nitai. So I just want to say that, mention that, because first off, that temple is now rising. And there's another verse from thousands of years ago. That verse is from 500 years ago. There's another verse from thousands of years ago that goes like this, if I can remember it. Goloka namni dvijadamni tale chatasya. And I am forgetting the rest of it, but that's the first two lines. Goloka namni dvijadamni tale chatasya. And that is explaining what that temple that Lord Nityananda referred to 500 odd years ago, what that temple will consist of. And it says it will show Devi Dam as the first dam, which is the dam that we live in right now, the material world, Devi Dam. And then the next dam is Mahesh Dam. It's the next dam up, if you like. And the next one up again is Haridam, or the Vaikuntha planets, this first spiritual realm, but into the spiritual realm. And then above that again is Goloka Dam, which is the abode of Lord Sri Krishna and his eternal consorts, like that. So what the reason I wanted to mention that was from the point of view that we have Gaunitai here in Copenhagen for the last 30 years, something like that, right? It's around about 30 years or something. We have Gaunitai here. More than. Thank you. Of course, in the eyes of eternity, you couldn't measure the more than. So there's no point mentioning it. I'm joking. So I just want to appreciate all those devotees that have been serving Gaunitai for the last 30 more years in Copenhagen. Just want to appreciate them for doing that and making. And when you see the curtains open, have a look first at the faces and of Gaunitai, but then how beautifully they're dressed and decorated like that. So it's just an appreciation for those devotees that have brought us Gaunitai here to Copenhagen and are maintaining Gaunitai in such a beautiful way, so that our doors are open to everyone to come. Now that is our challenge, by the way. Everyone in this room, except maybe for this lady who's here for the first time. But if you come again, then it will be your challenge as well. But for everybody in the room, our challenge is there's one talk that Srila Prabhupada gives. This is Srila Prabhupada, by the way, again, just for this lady, just in case. I just want to make sure that she's included and know. So this is Srila Prabhupada. So one time he was speaking about Gaunitai, and he said, "Don't keep them locked up in the cupboard." I once went to a person's house in London, wealthy person, in Pall Mall in London. If you ever, do you have the Monopoly game in Denmark? Monopoly, yeah? So in London, one of the most expensive places on the Monopoly board is Pall Mall, and this is where this person lives. So they have this big mansion in Pall Mall in London, and myself and a few others are invited for something. So when we got there to this big mansion, one of the devotees, I can't remember who, said, do you have deities? And the person said, oh, yes, I do. I have Gaunitai. We said, oh, great, so can we see them? So next thing, we spent what felt like the next hour, but it wasn't. It was probably only about 5 minutes or something, walking around this person's mansion through this door, that door, corridor, this way, that way, this way, that way. It was a huge place, huge place. You could fit like half of London in it, Anyway, Prabhupada also said, by the way, that you can only sleep in one bed and you can only eat so many chapatis. People don't need massive houses, what to speak of multiple massive houses and yachts and whatever. You can only sleep in one bed, you can only eat so many chapatis. Anyway, so we were walking around this person's house. You literally would have needed a sat-nav to, find your way around it. And eventually, what seemed like an age, he eventually goes into a room, which I think was the smallest room that we had been in so far, the smallest room. But when we went in there, because I think he said just for when, and here we are, something like that. So when he opened the door, we're all expecting to see Gaunitai, and we were looking around. He said, no, over here. He goes over to a corner in the room and opens the doors of a little cupboard. Inside he's got this massive house, and he's got. So when I heard Prabhupada, because I hadn't heard that lecture from Prabhupada before, I saw that was about 20 years ago that I was in that place in Pall Mall in London. It was after that I heard Prabhupada speak, and I couldn't stop laughing. Prabhupada says, do not keep Gaunitai locked up in your cupboard. I felt like ringing this guy, and saying, hey, listen to this. So our challenge is, if you like, is that we only have whatever this is. I'm brutal on square feet and square meters. So whatever it is, let's say it's 20 square meters. I don't know. Anyway, whatever it is, we can only fit so many people in here. But we want to get the whole of Copenhagen to actually take darshan of Gaunitai. So that's our challenge. 1, to keep bringing more and more people here. 2, to get a bigger place eventually, that we can have more people come. And 3, literally bring Gaunitai, at least in the form of the holy name, but even in the form of deities, actually. Gaunitai are so merciful. In religious traditions, there tends to be so many rules and regulations, and you can't do this, and you can't do that, and you've got to take this off and take that off, and you've got to touch your head at this time, and you've got to do this, and you've got to do that. It has your head spinning, trying to keep up with all the different rituals that different traditions have. Gaunitai do not accept offenses. They will not accept offense. It's an incredible thing. All they are giving is mercy all the time, blessings and mercy and goodwill all the time. So literally, Prabhupada said, we can actually have small Gaunitai days and we can give them to the public as dolls. They can take them. And then if that person brings them home and even once looks at them in a nice way, what to speak of maybe offer them a flower once in a blue moon, they will make unlimited spiritual progress like that. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that about the deities here. It's very nice to do. So then you might ask, why is all this important? And in the Bhagavad Gita, wherever it was, I had it a few minutes ago, wherever it went, it's this way. No, it's okay, you don't really need to get it. It's okay, no, it's okay. The Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says in one purport to one verse that he is translating, and thank you, Prabhu, and he says in the purport, he uses a phrase, and the phrase is the austerity of satisfaction. The austerity of satisfaction. Now, that's really interesting, at least from my point of view, that's really interesting, because normally we think of satisfaction as a good thing. If you're satisfied, That's a good thing. Well, why is that austere? So I kind of couldn't understand that phrase. But then later on, Prabhupada explains, he says, the reason that we're suffering from the austerity of satisfaction is because in the world that we're living in, you cannot achieve satisfaction. It cannot be achieved. And it's so important that we understand that. Satisfaction cannot be achieved in the material world. Now, there's a really simple reason for it. Really simple reason. Really simple reason. And that is that we are eternal spiritual beings. And ironically enough, that's something that all religious traditions agree on. Whether you're the Jewish tradition, the Hindu tradition, the Muslim tradition, Christian tradition, whatever, they all agree that we're eternal spiritual beings. So we are eternal spiritual beings. But right now, we're existing in a temporary world. Everything in this world comes to an end. Everything in this world has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Whereas from a spiritual point of view, there is no beginning. I remember I was in school, I think I was 12 years of age, and I was in school, and somehow or another, the teacher got us to look up in the dictionary the word eternity. So we looked it up in the dictionary, and it said, without beginning and without end. Up to that point, up until I had read that in the dictionary, I thought eternity just meant there was no end. But it actually said there's no beginning and no end. I didn't sleep that night. As a 12-year-old kid, I was lying awake trying to compute that, trying to process that. It was just really, wow, no beginning, no end. But anyway, there is no beginning and no end to us. Yet this world begins and ends. Therefore, we can never be happy here. We can never be happy here. And the reason we can't be happy here is because of that thing on the wall in the middle there. That will never allow us to be happy. It just never will allow us to be happy. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Stop. And there are so many stories in history, both in religious traditions, but also just in regular tradition, where you have people who want to stop the clock. They understand that ticking clock is a time bomb and it is actually interfering with their pleasure. But you can't stop it. Nobody can stop it. Actually, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, time I am, destroyer of the worlds. Everything is destroyed in due course of time in the material world, like that. So just to finish on that, so we're eternal, we're also full of knowledge, and we're also full of bliss on the spiritual platform. On the material platform, we're temporary, we're full of ignorance. And sometimes when I say that, people think, I'm not, Hey, that's also our temple. That building there is also part of our temple. I have no idea. I was in there earlier today. I can see it right now as I'm looking at it. I have no idea who's in there. I have no idea what they're doing. I can't see through walls. We are full of ignorance. There's so much we do not know. So much that we do not know. And we're full of suffering. Abrahma Bhuvana Loka, from the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of suffering because repeated birth and death take place. Repeated birth and death take place. We can't stop it. As long as we're in this world, we cannot stop the process of birth and death. And the two in the middle then, disease and old age. So birth, death, disease and old age. We cannot stop that. So therefore we can never be happy because we're eternal. And not only are we eternal, but we're eternally blissful. So we're eternally blissful beings and we're stuck in this place that just won't allow that eternality or that bliss to happen. It just won't allow it. So that's why Gaunitai descended 540 years ago. That's why Srila Prabhupada, at the age of 70, can you imagine, for like 35, 38 years, every time I would sit on one of these seats or even just sit anywhere, I would sit cross-legged. It's such a challenge for me to do that now. If I get this leg up and sit cross-legged and sit here for the next 20 minutes, it will take me about 3 days to get off this seat, for my legs to sort of, the blood to circulate again or whatever it is, So, and I'm 64. Prabhupada was 70 70 years of age, and he had never left the subcontinent of India. His whole, not even the subcontinent, just India. He had never left India. And at the age of 70, he gets himself on a cargo boat. Can you imagine? You know, how many of us have ever been on a cargo boat? I don't believe you. You know, throw her out. Okay, one person has been on a cargo boat. She was working on one. I don't know what you were working on one. There you go. There you go. How many of us in the last sort of 10 years have even been on a passenger boat? You know, we used to get on passenger boats when I was younger, actually, but they're not as common anymore. How many of us have been on an airplane? Everybody. So Prabhupada not only got on a cargo boat, but he was stuck on it for 6 weeks. It took 6 weeks to get from Calcutta to Boston in North America. So he's on a cargo boat for 6 weeks. Hey, and that's not all. He's on a cargo boat for 6 weeks, and he has 2 heart attacks. You know, on the boat, because the sea was so choppy, you know, and whatever like that, and the whole thing. Anyway, he had 2 heart attacks, you know. Eventually he arrives in America. And just as he's getting off the ship, the cargo boat, he says to Krishna, he says, Lord Krishna, I have no idea why you've brought me here. But if you want me to dance, make me dance. I get emotional when I say that because it's amazing. He was just so surrendered, you know, to the mission of giving us Krishna consciousness, saving us. That's what the message is. Giving us the knowledge to understand who we are, giving us the knowledge to understand the predicament we're in right now in the material world, but most of all, giving us the manual and the pathway and the process to actually get ourselves out of this predicament. That's why he came at 70 years of age. It's just quite extraordinary to people, to places he'd never been in before, people he never knew, the whole thing. Then there's one day he's in the east end of New York City, in what's called the Bowery. And basically the Bowery is the cheap part of New York City, and it's where all the kind of, I don't know what you call them here in Denmark, but let's say the less fortunate of society, you know, so the people living on the street, etc., you know, whatever, all that kind of people, you know. So in the Bowery, he has there's a room in the Bowery, and someone has arranged for him to have a little corner of it, and it's partitioned off, just like the curtains there, it's kind of partitioned off, a little room. And anyway, and in the rest of the place, you know, you've got, you know, junkies and, you know, or that kind of clientele, you know. And Prabhupada's like 70, 71 years of age or whatever he was at that time. And some journalist has found out that there's a Swami in New York, you know, a Swami from India, you know. So the journalist comes to the Bowery and comes in and finds out where Prabhupada is and goes and sits with Prabhupada and to ask him some questions. But the first question he asked him was, he says, "Oh, Swamiji, are these all your followers?" Prabhupada says, "No, I don't know who they are." So that, you know, a 70-year-old man living in an alien place, in a shared space with people who are taking drugs. I mean, what a sacrifice to make, to come and just to try to then reach out and give people Krishna consciousness, you know. And that's why, you know, we always say everything about the Hare Krishna movement is free. The mantra's free because there's people who charge a lot of money for mantras. The uptowns, probably was a downtown Swami, you know, the uptown Swamis, they would charge for the mantras. So everything is free. But there is one little thing that we should pay, and that is we should try to follow in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada to actually give other people this message. Just try to reach out to just one person. And if you reach out to one, then maybe 2, just to reach out to give them this message so that they can benefit as we've benefited from getting the message from Srila Prabhupada. What else did I want to say? Oh, yeah. And how much is that message needed? One time, Yamaraj, who is a personality who sort of looks after a certain department of the universe, let's say, on behalf of Krishna. One time, this personality, he asked another wonderful devotee, and his name was Yudhishthir, King Yudhishthir, wonderful, wonderful devotee. He was a devotee who never lied in his entire life. How many of us in the room have never lied in our entire life? Well, we have one liar. He put his hand up. I'm very disappointed in all of you. You're all liars. Oh my God. Yeah. So Maharaj Yudhishthir, King Yudhishthir, he never lied in his entire life. So he's a wonderful, wonderful, saintly person. So Yamaraj one time asked him, he said, Maharaj, he said, what is the most amazing thing that you find in this world? What's the most amazing thing in this world for you? And Yudhishthir said, Ahanyahani Bhutani, Ahanyahani Bhutani. And that translates as, the most amazing thing for Maharaj Yudhishthir in this world is that every single person in this world knows somebody who has died and is going to die themselves. How many people in this room know somebody who has died? You know, for myself, both of my parents have passed away. One of my siblings has passed away. My sister has passed away. You know, so all my grandparents have passed away. So, of course, I'm 64. But yeah, essentially everyone in the room put their hand up. They all know someone who has died. So Maharaj Yudhishthir said, everybody knows someone who has died, and everybody is going to die. Yet, everybody who is still alive acts in a way that it is never going to happen to them. That is an extraordinary thing when you think about it. You go down to Copenhagen this evening, because it's Sunday, it might be a little quiet. Last night, if we had gone down to Copenhagen last night, everyone's out, trying to have a good time. Sitting out in the cafes, drinking, whatever, singing, da-da-da-da. I think Denmark played a football match during the week, right? Yeah, and everyone's happy, right, because they won, yeah? You were watching, yeah? So, you know, so everyone is always trying to be happy. But that clock is ticking. The clock is ticking. You know, so in one sense you can say you can understand it when they're just young kids, teenagers maybe. Although even then we have a wonderful devotee called Prahlad Maharaj who was 5 years of age. And at 5 he was just telling everybody this message, you know. But it's urgent. Prabhupada gave the example that our existence in this material world is like a drop of water on a lotus leaf. Any leaf, really. You know, you go to use any leaf out there, and you'll see there's a drop of water on it, because leaves generally are bending downwards. You know, so at any moment that drop of water is just going to slip off the leaf. So that's our existence in this world. So really, we shouldn't wait till we're older. We should grab every moment and take it as an opportunity to prepare ourselves. And actually, going back to the different religious traditions, all the churches you will see here in Copenhagen, the synagogues, the mosques, the temples, etc., all of those buildings are actually monuments to the afterlife. They are monuments to the afterlife. And it's so unfortunate that for most of them, they're not the buildings, by the way, the people in them and the people, you know, in charge of them, they're not fulfilling that mission anymore, really. They've almost become more like kind of social clubs kind of thing, you know. But this is the essential message that every single one of us has to hear, absorb, and then act on. And it's in our own self-interest. If we want to be selfish, we shouldn't be selfish, of course, but, you know, real selfishness, Prabhupada actually said that, real selfishness is understanding who we are and then acting on that platform. That is real selfishness. Another phrase he used many times was, real philosophy means keeping death right in front of your eyes. That's real philosophy, always keeping death right in front of your eyes. And of course, sometimes people say, oh, it's a very morbid thing. No. What's morbid is ignoring it and then having to come back again and again and again. The wheel of samsara. Here's another thing. Once you leave this body, you don't know where you're going. So you don't know how many times you're going to get locked in this wheel of samsara, you know. But right now, you have a golden opportunity to get off the wheel of samsara forever by taking to spiritual practices, understanding who we are, serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we can get out of this thing that we are likely have been in for billions of years. There's another thing people find that extraordinary. What are you talking billions of years? I think some Christians, they say that humans have only existed for 5,000 years, It's like, no. This universe is eternally manifesting. And in each one of its cycles alone is billions of years. What to speak of it eternally manifesting like that? So we don't know how long it's taken us to get to this point. And if we don't take advantage of it, how many more times we'll have to go through that same process to get back to this point. So the fact that we have a human form of life, we can hear philosophy, we can understand philosophy. We really should take full advantage of it. But of course, there are so many competing forces out there. What time should I stop, actually? 15, okay. So there are so many competing forces out there that are pushing back against that. I mean, the obvious ones, the simple ones, are the 5 senses that we have. So, hearing, seeing, touching, tasting, smelling, etc. And the world that we live in, you go down Copenhagen. I was out yesterday walking around, not in the city, just here, just very near the temple here. And practically speaking, they weren't lampposts. They were like little, I don't know what they are. Are they some sort of electrical boxes or something? I don't know what those things are. And practically everyone in like a kind of suburban area, there was this poster, erotic something. I don't know if you've seen them, and a number and an address or something like that. Some erotic event coming up and going. Anyway, it's incredible. So that's one distraction, the sense of touch. And the sense of touch is represented through sex life, which is actually ultimately the hardest of the attractions, for want of a better word, to actually give up, But that's related to the sense of touch. But then, the smells that you get, all the different aromas tempting you in to eat this, eat that, eat the other thing kind of thing, and particularly, obviously, from our point of view, anything that is not vegetarian, anything that actually produces blood, we stay away from. And the reason that we stay away from that is a very practical reason, very important reason, is that if your diet is based on blood, so you're eating meat, if your diet is based on blood, it prohibits you from developing the quality of compassion. We were speaking about this yesterday, actually. I don't know if anybody has ever been to an abattoir or a slaughterhouse, but it's quite an amazing experience, amazingly horrible experience, but it's still a good experience, You go in, big queue, 100 animals, 200 animals, and the ones at the back, they're kind of okay. They're not really too bothered. Maybe there's a slight sense that there's something not quite right, but in general, it's no big deal, really. But as they start progressing up the queue and they're getting more of a sense of what's going on, the first thing is they start to sweat profusely. Then they start to pass urine profusely. Then they start to pass stool profusely. But what happens when they're literally 2 or 3 away from the head of the queue, or maybe 5, I'm not sure, I can't remember exactly, but when they're getting very close to being killed, they let out this piteous squeal. It's piercing. It's incredible. It's heartbreaking, actually. It's actually heartbreaking. I don't speak animal language, but it's obvious what they're saying. Please don't kill me. Please have mercy. Please don't kill me. Please have mercy. But of course, they get to the top and they're killed. I come from Ireland. In Ireland, the population is 5 million, similar to Denmark. But in Ireland, they kill 20 million animals every year. 4 times the population of the country are killed. Tolstoy, a Russian philosopher, once said, "For as long as there are slaughterhouses, there will be battlefields." So we're thinking we can solve problems of war. We see all the wars breaking out everywhere. We think we can solve them through negotiation, and peace. No. This is ugra karma. The only way you can stop war is by stopping the violence against every living entity. And if you don't do that, if you kill other living entities, innocent living entities, you will eventually be killing humans. You can't. You don't think you can kill millions of animals and then somehow or other there won't be any wars. Paul McCartney, who you probably know from the Beatles, he once said, if slaughterhouses had windows, everyone would be vegetarian. You go into the supermarket in your slickly packaged, meat with this plastic on it and the colorful wrappers, etc., etc. No, you go out and kill that animal for yourself before you eat it. And then you'll see meat eating or meat consumption dropping dramatically. So yeah, you cannot develop compassion. But that wasn't really the point I wanted to make, and he did only give me 15 minutes, so I better move on. So my point was about the senses. And here's the thing about the senses. Yes, it may be attractive to eat this, to touch that, to look at this, or whatever it might be. That may have an attraction for you. I think we can all relate to that, It's not an issue. But there is no such thing as a free lunch. This world is governed on the principle of karma. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So that essentially is where the phrase, there's no such thing as a free lunch, comes from. So everything that we do, there is a payback. It can be a good payback, it can be a bad payback. But by the way, even if it's a good payback, we're not interested in it. Because karma only exists in the material world. Karma doesn't exist in the spiritual world. So if we want to go to the spiritual world, then we also want to reject good karma, not just bad karma. We want to reject it all. But anyway, no such thing as a free lunch. So with the senses, you may enjoy those senses while you're in this body. But the more that you enjoy them, the more attached you become to them. And it's a little bit like, for instance, as an example, with this crisis that's in society. And it's amazing, isn't it? They solve one problem and then another problem comes along, that's even bigger and more challenging. So kind of one of the latest ones that's a real challenge for them is mobile phones and social media and the internet, particularly with children, how damaging it is for children to be, just on iPhones and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lady coming with her baby. And she's got her iPhone. I can see her iPhone in her hand. It's not. We all have iPhones. Don't worry. But it's just interesting. I'm just talking about them, and I see you coming in, and you've got the baby like that, and the iPhone's sticking up here, like that. Who told me this recently? Was that recently? Who told me that recently? Who told me that? I can't remember who told me it. But they said they were. Who was it? It's on the tip of my head. Who was that? And they realised it was. It'll come to me. Anyway, they were saying that they were putting their child to bed one night and they were reading them a story. Like so from Krishna book or whatever, reading them a story. I'll tell you a funny story about it. Which one will I do first? I'll tell you the funny story. I'll tell you this one first. So they're reading them a story from Krishna book. And they're reading the story and they're sort of scanning ahead a few lines and they're scanning ahead like that. And next thing, they're reading to the child, and next thing, they're checking their WhatsApp, and reading and checking WhatsApp at the same time. And they just thought, no, this is crazy, what sort of message am I sending to my children? The funny story is, I used to read Krishna book to my kids when they were young, and my youngest son, he must have been about 2.5, something like that, between 2 and 3 anyway. And we got to the story of Dravida Gorilla. We know the story of Dravida Gorilla? You know that story? Dravida Gorilla was a rascal, a demon, if you like. And he was intent on making the lives of the saintly devotees difficult. And one of his tactics was, wherever they were praying or wherever they were having their sort of sacred ceremonies, he would enter them and start urinating on all the special places, to destroy them, that kind of thing. And then to the women, he would start flashing. So, this is like, 5,000 years ago, he would be doing all sorts of obnoxious things, So I get to that story with my son one time, and I'm reading it, and that's okay, and that's over when he goes to bed, whatever. Then the next night, I'm going to the next story, because the idea is go through the whole Krishna book, go to the next story. And my son's name is Pancha, and I start reading the next one, and he looks at me and goes, no, Daddy, Dravida Gorilla. I think I was stuck on that pastime for about 2 months, reading Dravida, not because he was happy to hear about, Krishna and Balaram, and he just wanted to hear about it every time I said, and then Dravida Gorilla, urinated on the thing. It was quite funny. But at least he was hearing Krishna book, So the senses. So we may be attached to them, and you may think you're enjoying them. But the more you enjoy them, just like you might enjoy your iPhone, but then if you lose your iPhone, like people have committed suicide because they've lost their iPhone. Because they feel their life has disappeared. All their contacts are on it, all this, all that, all their photos, all this, all that, whatever's on it, you know? And it just becomes so distressful for them. They can't cope with life anymore, you know? So that's your iPhone. Now switch to your senses. All your life, all you have known in terms of perceiving this world and understanding this world, you have done through your senses, through seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling. At the time of death, you are going to be, against your will, you have no choice in it, you are going to be removed, not from your iPhone, from your senses. And there's a description in one Shastra, there's a description that one who is attached to their senses, because that's who they think they are. I mean, most people think they're the body, you know, and what is the body? The body is just the vehicle for carrying the senses. That's what the body is. So one Shastra says that if you're attached to your senses, and this is why it's really good to become detached from the senses, but it says if you're attached to your senses, then at the time of death, your experience of death will be equivalent to being simultaneously bitten by 60,000 scorpions over a prolonged period of time. It's not just a quick bite, over a prolonged period of time. So that's the harsh reality of the world we have come to. And we can't blame anybody else for that, because we chose to come here. We didn't have to come here. We chose to come here. So now, sitting in this room today, we have the solution to avoid being bitten by any scorpion. I've never been bitten by a scorpion. I suppose I wouldn't be here if I'd been bitten by a scorpion. But, we can avoid that by simply engaging in spiritual activity, chanting Hare Krishna, so we hear the holy name, honoring or tasting prasadam so that we satisfy the sense of taste, etc., looking at the beautiful deities of Gaunitai so we can satisfy our eyes, etc., like that. And at the time of death, Srila Prabhupada, on his deathbed, was the most extraordinary thing ever. A week or two before Prabhupada left the world, a doctor came. It was a friend of Prabhupada's, actually, and Prabhupada didn't really want to be seeing doctor, whatever, but the devotees insisted that a doctor come and just see if he can this, that, or the other. Anyway, the doctor came, and after he visited Prabhupada, when he left the room, the devotees wanted to know, well, what? And the doctor said, that is the most extraordinary experience I've ever had in my life. Because Srila Prabhupada is basically skin and bone. You know that phrase, skin and bone? And particularly as people get older, they lose their muscle mass, it fades away. So this doctor said, Srila Prabhupada was literally skin and bone. What that means is all of his nerve endings in his body are all exposed. Anybody in that situation is usually on, I don't know what figure he gave, but on the highest level of morphine that they can be given to actually dampen down the pain. Srila Prabhupada was on zero medication, absolutely nothing. And when the doctor came in to see Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada recognized him because he knew him, he came from Delhi. Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, which is about a 4-hour drive. And all Prabhupada did was he said, his name was Dr. Kapoor. I don't think Prabhupada called him that, but anyway, because he was a friend, but it was Dr. Kapoor. He said, you've come from Delhi. Have you rested? Have they given you prasadam? Are you feeling okay? All Prabhupada was concerned about was the doctor who'd made the journey to come and see him. And Prabhupada's lying there. He passed away 2 weeks later. Minutes before Srila Prabhupada passes away, he has a microphone in front of him. The devotees are holding the microphone. And he's translating, not the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, but he's translating one of these sacred scriptures. And the last line that he speaks is, when everyone is aware, when everyone understands that all objects, both animate and inanimate, are the property of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that consciousness is Krishna consciousness. I mean, go to a hospital, go to a ward where people are dying. There is no question that they're in any way, and they're drugged up to them, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. But if we control our senses in this lifetime, then, I'm not saying that we'll get to the level of Srila Prabhupada, but we'll get quite a distance that way. And our departure from this world will be glorious and our destination will be even more glorious again. Whereas if we just stick to the thing about, oh, well, I like touching this, I like tasting that, I like seeing this or whatever, okay, fine, but hey, in 10 years' time, 5 years' time, 3 years' time, 1 year's time, 6 months' time, 2 weeks' time, tomorrow, we will really suffer for that, Yeah, so that's the whole reason that Srila Prabhupada took that journey in 1965 to come and give this message. And nothing pleases Prabhupada more, and certainly nothing pleases Krishna more than us not just getting that message, but doing our very best to act on that message. But as I said, there's loads of competing forces, and I'll end on this point, loads of competing forces. I recently read, I read it a long time ago, but I reread it recently. There's a paper from a group of eminent scientists. And it's a very long paper, but they have, excerpts from it. If you like, it's kind of like we talk about the Chatur Sloki in the Bhagavad Gita and the Chatur Sloki in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So their kind of Chatur Sloki bit is a couple of sentences. And the sentences, they talk, by the way, this scientific paper is about the origin of the universe. That's what the paper is about, the origin of the universe. So these couple of sentences say, this universe came out of nothing. This universe came out of nothing. However, because nothing is inherently unstable, now I don't know if you knew that. I don't know if you knew that nothing is inherently unstable. Personally, I thought nothing is nothing. No thing, nothing, nada. That's what I always thought nothing meant. But no. Nothing is inherently unstable. And because nothing is inherently unstable, something had to come from it. And what came from it was all this universe that you see around you. What a load of absolute nonsense. But here's the thing. Scientists are intelligent on one level, and they're well educated. And the combination of those two things means most people don't question them, or even if they're tempted to question them, they're intimidated by them. So they can come out and spout this absolute rubbish. And you can just imagine if they were in a seminar hall making that presentation and speaking those words. You can, let's say a 500-seat auditorium. You can just imagine people going, and people looking at each other, wow, yeah, wow, that's amazing. And it's just absolute rubbish. So that's the whole thing. We have to, Jai Haribol. We have to reach out to as many people as we can reach out to with this message. And we have to challenge the people on the basis of the supreme knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, those rascals that try to make out that somehow or another, well, they're trying to make out there's no God, but they think they are supremely intelligent. These people, they have to go to the loo every day. These people also, Jai Shishi Gonitai Ki, these people also cannot see through walls, etc. Yet they have the audacity to try to tell us that there is no such thing as a supreme person. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.